Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Uh, okay, so today we're going to be doing an update basically on the white Shadowline, and this car needed major body work, right? And I'll put the link in the description of the previous videos on the vehicle. So it's a white Shadowline 0086 fin. Car came in here, building it for a customer that's out of town, but after blasting the car, so the car looked like a decent car when it came in, but after blasting the car, we found basically the car was a cut and joint, right? So I've done that in the previous videos. Like I said, I'll drop the link in the description. I'll see if I can try and put a picture of that in. Okay, so I've been always telling you guys about these cut and join stories, right? So if you've got, for example, the guys that's cutting off roofs and replacing roofs, the guys that's cutting off rear sections and replacing rear sections, and I've been talking about measurements and why it's important to have the jig in place, so the chassis machine / jig. So this is a car machine jig, right? So very similar to the Select. If the guys have followed these guys here, these are exclusive machines. So your measurements are, you've got so many rooms for placing measurements and so on like that. And I think on the one IS we've done the front section of it, where I showed you it's very important for us to have measurements of the shock tower, especially if we're doing a replacement shock tower on it. The same thing here. Here we're doing a rear replacement shock tower on it. So as my video before, this car was a cut and join in the center. They joined the car at the back here, right? But what they done was they didn't treat the rust properly, or they didn't treat the weld properly, and we started rusting basically from the new welding all the way out there. So what we've done is we've made a decision to pull the whole floorboard out, right? So around the floorboard they had welding around the spare wheel, so they cut over the spare wheel, around the spare wheel, and they got up a whole lot of funny tricks on there, right? Then they had a whole slash in between the rear valence. So we've got that donor car that we were playing with, and I said, okay, fine, let's rather use the rear valence from there. We pulled the fender off from there, and we started seeing a whole lot of drama unfold. So we started digging in further, and look, the further we dig in, we know we're going to find crap, but it's better that we find the crap and just get it seen to. So we first pulled out the fender, the outer fender, we've pulled out the outer arch, we pulled out the inner arch. The inner arch is still loose here, I've just got it clamped on here now. We've pulled out the rear valence, and we ended up cutting off the rear chassis leg, right? So the reason why we cut off the rear chassis leg is because they had a weld going through the rear chassis leg. And if I didn't do that now, we wouldn't have gotten to the rust where they welded. So I'm going to lift the car up just to show you the importance basically of measurements. This is one of the nice things about this machine here, is that we can lift up. It works as a lift as well. So to get under the car and to get welding properly, we can actually use it the way we need to. It's quite a pricey machine, but okay, so I think that height is good. So we've gone through with measurements, right? And Lush, okay, let's just give them an example here. So you've got measurements all the way. You've got angle measurements out here, you've got height measurements here, and you've got your left and rights basically at the bottom here, right? Then you've got your plug-in points on the jig itself. So when we get measurements out from factory, we're using BMW measurements at this point in time. That gives us certain points to measure from. So when you see holes or whatever it is, it's not just a hole for nothing. It's basically a measurement point. Sorry. Let me just cut it cool. Right, so we've got our first measurement is basically over here. Atul came and measured out. So we've got our points on the subframe. That's these points here. So you can see we're locked in here, and we seem to be squared in here, right? This here is going to be our shock tower measurement point here. So our shock tower is actually loose now. That is, we've got a clamp holding it over here, and we've got another clamp holding it, a vice grip holding it over here, right? If I take this here off now, this panel is actually loose, and this is basically our factory measurement for our inner shock tower. So the thing is, if you take it off and you say, okay, fine, but listen, I can go back and I can re-weld it onto the original spot welds, that's a fart in the air, if I can call it that, right? So there's a possibility that you might get it out a couple of mils. It's a big possibility that you might get it out a couple of mils, right? So, and you're only going to know that once you start assembling the vehicle and you start putting panels on, or you see the vehicle moving skew. So a lot of the times you see these taxis or these buckies, and the back is basically overtaking the front. This is one of the reasons why. So we've gone through, gotten our exact measurement from there. So we've locked this jig into place here. Then for our chassis leg, the reason why we also chose to cut it out is because we've got our squaring out for the chassis leg. So when we put our chassis leg in, there is a marking hole on the chassis leg that will fit into this guy here, into the jig now. We'll be able to put that in, mark it from there, right? And then get our rear valence onto that. Having said that, you can actually see, yeah, we actually picked up an issue. So don't worry about we've got some flash rust starting, of which I think I got another week or so to get this car off the machine so I can start soda blasting it. And I'll use some phosphoric acid basically to clean off, but it's surface, so I'm not too stressed about it. And it's mostly on the panels that I might still replace again. Here we picked up an issue here. So we've got the jig measured up as to our BMW measurements, right? So we get BMW measurements and we get measurements from car machine themselves from Italy. We picked up an issue already on the front suspension. So in theory, when we put the car onto the jig, your front is supposed to lock in, right? Here by your cross member here, like it's locked in on that side there. So that one is locked in there, but this guy is not lining up at all. So this is the gap that we have. So I got about a 5mm gap of it being out. So it gets a shim here with a bolt, but it's out. So we know that the guy is warped over to the side here as well. So I've got to pull that straight there. But in order for me to pull that straight, I need to first grab the car at the back there. So we need to sort the back of the car out first. Once that is done, we can come back and line up and do checkpoints here. So our other checkpoints that we'll do from this here is basically getting the chassis lined up in front, and we'll do points in the front. You'll see there's actually a cut and weld, or I don't know what is this. It's not a cut and weld. I'll dig in further here. I don't know if it's a cut and weld or if it's just a pull and they pulled wrong. So we'll have to correct this chassis leg as well in here. So quick update. I'll do an update as we're going through with this vehicle. We'll do an update of how far we're getting. What I would like to do is, while the panels are off, I am going to come and clean up in here. So I'm going to be using a mixture between some blasting and some wire wheeling off here, right? These are original E-coats in here. So we're going to clean this here up, get this here primed, basically up to spec again. Get every single panel cleaned up and primed up to spec. So we've got longevity going forward. Basically, this year will be able to last you. It's not just a cut and join or a patch up. So, is there anything else I'm missing here? Okay, one more thing is this roof has collapsed. Okay, but we'll talk about that. So we've got to also I've got to do measurements on the roof, pull the roof out before we get to this panel here. Let me drop the car quickly for you, and I'll actually explain that out in the video. So this is the beauty part about this machine, is that we can do what we have to do and we're not limited to it. Okay, so let's switch this guy off. Okay, so somehow, some way during the repair, right, this panel is also going to get replaced. This rear valence at the rear top valence at the back here, this is going to get repaired, not repaired, I'm going to replace it actually, because there was a cut and join, there's a weld there, so I'm going to pull this guy off, replace that. Then someone went to go and take off here very nicely, and you'll see that the whole roof structure is actually pulled down. So what we're going to do is, and this happened basically after we locked in here, so we will lift the roof up again, get to its measurements, get this guy lined up before we get the fender back in place. This is just a quick episode on this guy here. I think you guys are going to like the next video coming up. The next video is actually going to be of the differences of blasting and chemical tapping, as we're seeing overseas. So stay tuned for that. That should come out late in the week. I don't know if I'm going to have updates for you guys on the cars. I think from next week we've got quite a few updates on paint. So I might just do final primer updates this week here. and then definitely next week we got color going on to them. So next week is actually going to be very exciting. Yeah, guys, you guys know what to do. Another thing is, thank you for the birthday wishes. I haven't responded to a lot of people, but thank you for that. I appreciate it. There has been a lot going on, that's why I haven't responded or put up other videos. But again, thank you for that, and it was appreciated. Guys, you guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share. And let me know what you guys think about this guy. Cheers, guys.